Zelma adjusted the sleeves of her plain dress as the guests whispered around her. The woman she once called sister clinked her glass and announced, "She's just my maid. Excuse her outfit." Laughter rippled across the crowd. Zelma stood still, but the room went silent when the CEO of Tembika Group walked in, glanced at her, and smiled. "Zelma, our lead investor, didn't know you were attending today." Everyone froze, especially Noro. Zelma and Noro grew up in the same small neighborhood and spent almost every day together. They were not just cousins, they were like sisters, sharing dreams and secrets. But as they grew older, their paths started to change. Zelma was quiet and focused. She did many small jobs, like cleaning houses and selling things at the market, just to pay for her school fees. She didn't tell anyone about her struggles, and she kept working hard without making a big deal about it. Meanwhile, Noro was different. She loved being around people and quickly learned how to use her charm to get what she wanted. She made friends with rich people and showed off her expensive clothes and parties. Everyone admired Noro because she was confident and loud, but behind the smiles, she cared more about looking successful than actually working for it. While Zelma quietly saved money and studied late into the night, Noro was busy climbing the social ladder, moving from one glamorous event to another. People saw Noro as popular and important, while Zelma was often overlooked and forgotten. But Zelma's quiet work was building something strong inside, something no one could see yet. In the end, the real difference between them was not who was louder or flashier, but who worked with real purpose and patience. Zelma's journey was slow and steady, and she was about to show the world that success does not need to shout to be heard. After they finished university, their lives started to look very different. Noro got married to a rich man who was a big name in real estate. Because of this, she moved into a world that was full of fancy parties, expensive cars, and luxury homes. She was now part of the city's elite, mixing with powerful people and living a life many only dreamed about. Everywhere she went, people knew her as the wife of a successful businessman, and she loved the attention. Her days were filled with glamorous events, social gatherings, and endless selfies showing off her new lifestyle. To the outside world, Noro had it all: beauty, wealth, and status. But while Noro was busy showing off her life, Zelma took a very different path. No one really noticed what Zelma was doing because she kept it quiet and private. Instead of chasing fame or flashy things, Zelma joined a group of women investors who supported each other in building businesses across Africa. This group was full of smart, hard-working women who believed in helping each other grow, but their work was behind the scenes. Zelma used her savings and skills to quietly invest in 3 big startups, companies that were changing the way people lived and worked. These startups were creating new jobs and bringing fresh ideas to the continent, but nobody at the parties knew Zelma was behind some of their success. She didn't post about it on social media or brag to anyone. Instead, she stayed low-key, focusing on growing her investments and learning from the best. While Noro's world was full of loud parties and fake smiles, Zelma's was filled with meetings, plans, and real work that would pay off in the future. Most people still thought Zelma was just the simple cousin, but she was quietly building a fortune that would one day surprise everyone. Their shared rooms and childhood memories now felt very far away. Noro was living a life full of appearances, while Zelma was creating real power from the shadows. It was clear that although their paths had separated, only one of them was truly building something that would last. The world was about to see how different their stories really were. Noro had always believed that Zelma would never step into her world, the world of glitz, glamour, and high society. So, when Noro sent Zelma an invitation to a big, fancy launch party for a new luxury brand, she wasn't really expecting her cousin to come. It was almost like a joke, inviting someone she thought didn't belong, just to show off how far she had come. Noro imagined Zelma would stay away, too simple and quiet to fit in with the rich crowd. But Zelma surprised everyone. On the night of the party, she showed up quietly, wearing a plain, simple dress and no makeup. She didn't try to impress anyone with fancy clothes or jewelry. Instead, she walked in with calm confidence, as if she belonged there just as much as anyone else. The guests, dressed in sparkling gowns and sharp suits, whispered among themselves, curious about this low-key woman who didn't match the party's usual style. Noro's face tightened as she saw Zelma enter the room. Her pride quickly turned to irritation. How could Zelma show up like this? So calm and unbothered. It felt like a challenge to everything Noro had worked so hard to build. Wanting to control the situation, Noro rushed over and introduced Zelma to the other guests, but not as the cousin or even a guest. Instead, Noro said with a forced smile, "Oh, this is just someone who helps me with errands." The words hit the room like a cold breeze. The guests laughed politely, clearly believing Noro's story. Zelma was suddenly made small, invisible in a room full of wealth and power. The insult was loud and clear. Zelma did not belong here. She was just a helper, someone beneath their notice. But Zelma didn't react. She didn't get angry or try to explain herself. Instead, she stood quietly, her eyes calm and steady, as if she was waiting for something better to come. The guests, curious but confused, continued to watch. Some began to wonder if there was more to Zelma than met the eye. But for now, Noro had the room fooled, and Zelma was left standing in the shadows of her cousin's pride. Little did anyone know, this moment was just the beginning of a story that would soon change everything. Zelma's simple dress and quiet presence were not signs of weakness. They were the calm before the storm. When Zelma arrived at the party, she hoped for a chance to enjoy the evening like any guest. But Noro made it clear she didn't belong in the best seats. The head table, where the richest and most important people sat, was already full, and there was no space for Zelma. Instead, she was told to sit far away, where the room felt less bright and the conversations less exciting. Zelma felt the sting of being pushed aside, but she stayed calm. She didn't complain or make a scene. When Zelma tried to join a conversation or say something, Noro quickly snapped at her, telling her to stay quiet. It was as if Zelma's voice was not worth hearing in that room full of power and money. Noro wanted everyone to know who was in control and who was not. To make things worse, Noro made Zelma carry extra bottles of champagne to the guests. This was not a small favor. Zelma had to walk back and forth, balancing several heavy bottles, while guests looked on and chuckled. Some whispered jokes and laughed at the awkwardness of the situation. It was clear that Noro wanted to humiliate Zelma in front of everyone, showing that she was nothing more than a servant in this world. But Zelma stayed quiet. She didn't shout or cry. Instead, she moved with grace, never losing her calm. Inside, she knew this moment was not the end, but a test. She waited patiently, watching and learning, knowing that real strength did not come from loud words or flashy actions. The guests might have laughed, but Zelma's silence was louder than any noise in the room. She waited because she knew her time was coming, a time when she would not be pushed aside or laughed at. This was just a moment of darkness before her light would shine. No matter how many bottles she carried or how many times she was ignored, Zelma's heart stayed strong. She understood that true power comes from patience and confidence, not from being loud or cruel. This night would be remembered, but not for the reasons Noro thought. It was the night Zelma began to show everyone that she was far more than a maid or a joke. She was someone to watch. The room was buzzing with chatter and laughter when the doors suddenly opened wide. Everyone turned to see CEO Kamno of Tembeka Group enter the party. He was a powerful man, respected by many across the city and beyond. The moment he stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. Guests quickly stood up out of respect, their conversations lowering to whispers. Noro's eyes lit up as she saw Kamno. She hurried over, eager to impress him and show off her place in the elite circle. She smiled brightly, ready to introduce herself and maybe gain his favor. But Kamno's attention wasn't on Noro. Instead, his eyes swept across the room and suddenly stopped on Zelma, standing quietly in the corner. For a moment, the room fell silent, everyone watching the unexpected meeting. Kamno's face broke into a warm, genuine smile as he said, "Zelma, what a surprise." His voice was calm, but carried power. Then he added, "The board has been asking about your next pitch." Those words shocked the guests. Whispers started spreading quickly like wildfire. People looked at Zelma with new curiosity and respect. The woman Noro had introduced as just someone who helps with errands was actually a key player in a big business deal. Kamno's words crushed the false image Noro had tried so hard to create. The guests began to realize that Zelma was not a maid or a simple helper. She was an important investor, someone with power and influence. Noro's confident smile faded, replaced by confusion and fear. She tried to hide her shock, but it was clear to everyone. The illusion she had built around Zelma was breaking apart right in front of her eyes. Zelma stood tall, her calmness shining brighter than ever. She didn't need to say more. Kamno's simple greeting said it all. In that moment, the whole room saw the truth. Zelma was not invisible. She was powerful, respected, and the future of many big deals. The whispers grew louder as guests began to talk among themselves, amazed by Zelma's real status. What Noro thought was a quiet, unimportant woman had just been revealed as a queen in the business world. The night took a new turn, and everyone waited to see what Zelma would do next. The CEO's entrance had not only broken the party's energy, it had shattered the lies, exposing the real story behind Zelma's quiet strength. The moment Kamno spoke, the whole room fell into a stunned silence. People stopped chatting and stared at Zelma with wide eyes, trying to understand what they had just heard. Kamno explained how Zelma was not just any guest. She was the silent investor behind a very successful app. This was the same app Noro's husband had recently begged Kamno to fund because it was growing fast and had great potential. Hearing this, the guests exchanged shocked looks. Noro's bright smile, which had been shining so confidently earlier, started to fade. She looked around nervously, realizing her carefully built image was beginning to crack. All the stories she told about Zelma being just a helper or maid now sounded like lies. Noro's world, built on charm and false appearances, began to fall apart right in front of everyone. The guests, who once laughed quietly at Zelma, now whispered among themselves, clearly impressed by her real power. Noro tried to keep her composure, but it was clear she was losing control of the situation. Her pride, which once made her feel untouchable, was now replaced by fear and shame. She realized that the truth about Zelma's success was coming out, and she could no longer hide behind her pretenses. As the whispers grew louder, Noro felt trapped, like everyone was watching her fail. Her lies were unraveling one by one, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Zelma, on the other hand, stood calm and confident. She didn't need to say anything more to prove her worth. The truth had spoken for itself, and it changed everything. Noro's jealousy and arrogance, once so strong, now seemed weak and empty. The guests who had admired Noro's wealth and status were now beginning to admire Zelma's quiet strength and real achievements. This moment showed everyone that true power is not about showing off or pretending, but about working hard and being genuine. Noro's world, full of illusions, was crumbling, while Zelma's silent work and patience were shining brighter than ever. The party, once full of noise and fake smiles, had become a turning point, the moment when the real story was finally told. Noro's fall was Zelma's rise, and everyone watching knew it. As the night went on and dessert was being served, the room was still buzzing with whispers and curious glances toward Zelma. The atmosphere felt electric, like something big was about to happen. Kamno, the CEO, quietly approached Zelma with a small piece of paper folded neatly in his hand. Without saying much, he slipped the napkin into her palm and gave her a knowing smile. Zelma glanced down and unfolded the napkin carefully. Written in clear, bold letters were just a few words. "Would you like to buy this company instead?" The question was simple but powerful. It wasn't just a business offer. It was a sign that Kamno recognized Zelma's potential and wanted her to take charge. Zelma's heart didn't race or skip a beat. Instead, she smiled softly, a smile full of calm confidence. She folded the napkin back neatly, as if this was just another step in her plan. Turning to Kamno, she said in a steady voice, "Let's discuss tomorrow." Those few words carried so much meaning. It showed she was ready for bigger challenges, ready to step into a role of true leadership. The guests nearby who caught this moment felt the weight of what just happened. This was not just about money or power. It was about respect, trust, and a new beginning for Zelma. Everyone watching realized that Zelma had quietly moved from the shadows into the spotlight, but on her own terms. She didn't need to shout or show off. Her strength was in her calm and sure decisions. Noro, standing not far away, felt a deep chill run through her. That little napkin had just changed everything. It wasn't just a note. It was a turning point that made it clear Zelma's rise was unstoppable. The offer to buy the company was like a key handed over, opening the door to a future where Zelma would no longer be ignored or belittled. Instead, she would lead, make big moves, and change the game entirely. The rest of the night passed in a blur for many, but for Zelma, it was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where she no longer had to hide, where her hard work was finally recognized and rewarded. The small napkin with those simple words carried the power to rewrite her story forever, and everyone there could feel the shift in the air. It was a moment no one would forget. After the surprising moment with Camno's note, Zelma stood up calmly and excused herself from the table. She walked out of the main hall, leaving behind a stunned crowd, and especially a very confused and shaking Noro. Noro's face was pale, her confidence shattered, and she didn't know what to say or do. She had tried to keep Zelma small all evening, but now the truth was out, and her lies were falling apart. As Zelma made her way through the hallway, something unexpected happened. One by one, guests she had barely noticed before started stopping her. They looked at her with new respect and even some guilt. Some whispered sorry, others quietly said things like, "I didn't know who you really were," or "You deserve better than how she treated you." It was clear that the guests who had laughed and whispered about Zelma now understood how wrong they had been. One older woman gently came closer and whispered in Zelma's ear, "She called you a maid, but you walked like a queen." Those words felt like a crown being placed on Zelma's head. It wasn't just about appearances or clothes. It was about how Zelma carried herself with dignity and strength, even when others tried to humiliate her. Zelma's calm and quiet confidence made everyone around her see that real respect is earned through character, not wealth or loud words. People began to admire her for staying strong, not for showing off. The night that was supposed to be about glitz and social status had turned into a moment where true worth was revealed. Noro, still inside, watched from a distance as guests who once followed her lead now quietly respected Zelma. The tables had turned, but Zelma did not celebrate loudly or seek revenge. Instead, she reclaimed her respect by being graceful and kind. That night, Zelma proved something important. No matter how much someone tries to put you down, your true value shows through how you handle yourself. Even when others judge by looks or status, honesty and inner strength shine brightest. The guests left with a new understanding, and Zelma walked away knowing she had won without a single harsh word or fight. Her respect was reclaimed, not by breaking others, but by standing tall and letting the truth speak for itself. After the party, Zelma could have chosen to hurt Noro badly. She had every reason to. After all, Noro had embarrassed her in front of everyone and treated her like she was nothing. But Zelma was different. She didn't want to destroy anyone. Instead, she decided to act with quiet strength and wisdom. Zelma learned that Noro's husband was struggling badly with his real estate business. The company was failing, and many employees were about to lose their jobs. Without making a scene or telling anyone, Zelma carefully made plans. Using her investments and money she had saved over the years, she quietly bought out the company. Her goal was simple: to save the business and protect the people who depended on it. While many people thought Zelma was just a quiet woman with no power, she was now the one in control. She kept the company running smoothly, saved hundreds of jobs, and made sure everything was set for a better future. She didn't make a big announcement or celebrate loudly. Instead, she worked behind the scenes, proving her strength without needing to shout it out. When Noro found out what had happened, she was shocked. For the first time, she realized how wrong she had been. It wasn't just about money or status. Zelma was a force of power and kindness combined. Noro wept, but not because she lost the company. She cried because she felt deep shame. She understood that she had judged and insulted someone who had quietly built a life far greater than hers. This moment was the full circle of their story. Zelma didn't seek revenge or try to ruin Noro. Instead, she chose a path of grace and success. Her victory was not loud or cruel. It was calm, wise, and strong. She showed everyone that real power doesn't need to hurt others. It can uplift and protect. Noro's tears were a reminder that pride and false judgments can cost a person dearly. Meanwhile, Zelma's quiet triumph became a story whispered by many, a story about respect, patience, and the power of rising without breaking others. It was a lesson that true strength lies not in revenge, but in kindness and dignity. Months passed, and Zelma's life changed in ways no one had expected. She didn't chase fame or shout about her success. Instead, she kept building quietly, working hard behind the scenes. One day, a famous magazine called Women of Worth Africa chose her for their cover story. The headline praised her strength, vision, and the way she rose from nothing to become a powerful investor and leader. People who had once ignored or laughed at her now looked at her with respect. They whispered about the woman who didn't need to prove herself with loud words or flashy clothes. Zelma's legacy was different. It was built in silence, with patience and steady effort. She showed that true class is not about showing off. It's about confidence that doesn't need attention, power that doesn't ask for permission. Even after the party where Noro humiliated her, Zelma never talked about it publicly. She didn't need to explain or remind anyone of what happened. That one night was enough to teach everyone an important lesson. Real respect and power come quietly but leave a lasting impact. Zelma didn't just enter the room. She owned it without making a scene. Her story spread like a quiet fire, inspiring many women across Africa and beyond. They saw in her the proof that you don't have to be loud or cruel to win. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to stay calm and let your work and character speak for you. Zelma's journey wasn't about revenge or proving others wrong. It was about building a legacy that lasts. And that legacy, it's remembered not because she shouted, but because she showed what true power really looks like. Silent, strong, and unstoppable. If you believe in quiet strength and rising above it all, share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to follow for more powerful tales that show real success comes from within.